Don't say that you want to kill her. Don't say that. You don't mean that.
I want to kill every motherfucker in this motherfucking world. What did I tell you last night? If I don't have a connection or a release,
you can't cut yourself.
It goes to violence unless I do this.
Okay, but you cannot.
Do you want me to be in prison?
No, I don't.
Do you want somebody else to hurt?
No.
Because what the fuck do you think is gonna happen? I have nobody to love me.
Helpline?
Do you offer services for men as well as women?
No, just women.
Do you know anyone in the area that does offer?
If you're ever in a position where you're being abused and you can't...
While it's well documented that women are significantly more likely to be injured or killed in domestic violence incidents, men are notably less likely to report these crimes to the police. Many men fear social stigma, doubts about their masculinity, and the possibility of not being believed or even being falsely accused of being the aggressor. This contributes to domestic violence being one of the most underreported crimes globally for men. The topic of intimate partner violence against men is a hotly debated area of research. Terms like gender symmetry, battered husband syndrome, and bidirectional IPV sparked intense discussions.
Hey, I can take the hits, I can just kind of like shut my brain off and be somewhere else. And, if you're into this, so she would do those kind of things to me. So I guess part of the background, we were both into the punk scene and vampires and stuff like that. I don't know if some of that fits into some of this, with like the bondage and S&M kind of stuff. So when my wife was a little kid, she was drawing pictures. She showed them to me, like when we met, or she's with like people with their skin on fire or people getting hurt and stuff. So she was, even during our relationship, she told me many times that she believed there weren't enough female serial killers in the world. She was like, why are all the serial killers men? Maybe she mistakenly thought like this was like female empowerment or something like that. And ultimately she became a dominatrix. She liked beating me and causing me pain and stuff. And other things she was into was like humiliating me in front of my friends. My ex-wife told me sometimes she had fantasies about cutting my penis off and having it surgically attached to her. She wanted to make me a woman, and she wanted to become a man.
Right.
Around 1999, we had an argument, and the marriage wasn't going really well. And then I saw her, and then she was acting all cheerful and stuff like that. She's like, "Oh, I baked you a roast." Here he goes, like, "Oh, didn't you?" She's like, "Oh, I already ate." So I didn't realize at the time, like, I ate it. Now looking back on it, I believe there was ground up glass in the meat. I had like a lot of stomach pains and stuff like that, and I remember laying in bed being, just in a lot of pain, and she's like, "Just be quiet, it'll all be over really soon." I believe there's probably more than once, like, that she tried to poison me. Since it didn't work, I think it kind of became like increasing amount of like either ground up glass, or I don't even know what was in some of the stuff. I had like red oil was leaking out of my anus. I couldn't stop it for like 2 weeks or something. We moved to, so at that time she was having an affair with a guy. I didn't know about it. It was at that time she decided she wanted to get rid of me. There was one time, I believe, she left something poison in the refrigerator, maybe like in the juice or whatever. She disappeared during that time. I didn't know where she was. Like, she told me she was going to visit her mom. So then I was calling her mom. I was looking for her. I didn't know where she was for several days. She was really with the guy she was having an affair with. To this day, I still have like stomach issues, maybe from like the glass and stuff. Like I have a lot of gastrointestinal kind of problems. I had a suicide attempt, because my marriage was failing. Everything was like falling apart. And right before I did, I decided to accept Jesus into my life at that point is when I became a born-again Christian. I was just like, okay, screw all the beliefs I had before, I'm going to do the exact opposites, and like, I'm going to end it all. I didn't actually ever want to get divorced. She was the one later who wanted to get divorced. I didn't figure it all out till later. And on the phone, she was like saying like, you just won't die, will you? And there's like a lot of evidence I've had for things that I'm trying to, that, she actually was trying to kill me. More towards the end, she was even considering trying to bring in like other guys and stuff into our sex life to do, to abuse me. I was thinking like I had to do it or she was going to leave and whatever. And that was like another reason why I had the suicide attempt. Is like, I don't know. And then, just a lot of turmoil in my life, and I just decided to end it. I wasn't as into it as her. Like, I'd suffered abuse before from my father being hit and stuff like that. So it's like, hey, I can take the hits. I can just kind of like shut my brain off and be somewhere else. And if you're into this, so she would do those kind of things to me. Called the police, and I was telling them like, because also she disappeared with a guy, so they basically stole everything from me. She stole the house. She like forged my name on it, emptied the bank accounts, and was forging my name like on cars and stuff for him and her. And the cops just sort of laughed at me. They're like, "What do you want us to do about it?" So in some ways, like I'm more angry at the police. The police's like lack of help and things than. In some ways, I can forgive her and I'm over it. But many times in my life when I needed the help of the police, they weren't there for me, and then they act kind of really irritated that you call. So that's a big part of it with me. And because of them not helping too, then, I'm going to divorce courts for 2 years, and these are issues in divorce courts. So everything at my job for 2 years went to like paying the attorneys, even though she was unfaithful to me, was poisoning me, forged my name on the house and documents and everything. I ended up giving up in court after a while. Like, at some point you just have to like cut your losses because it just keeps destroying your life and using up all your money and everything. I had to like stop the self-hate towards myself and move forward. As a follower of Jesus, I actually forgive her, and I pray that she finds salvation one day.
Some experts argue that focusing on female-perpetuated violence is part of an anti-feminist backlash, aiming to undermine the serious issue of male-perpetuated abuse. They believe this shift detracts from the critical work of addressing violence against women. Some researchers contend that violence against men is a significant and underreported problem. They argue that the domestic violence studies, influenced by feminist perspectives, have often ignored male victims to protect the achievements of the battered women's movement, which views intimate partner abuse primarily as an extension of patriarchal dominance.
The Ananias Foundation is a nonprofit organization. Our mission is to help those who are causing harm in a relationship. What the dominant narrative is about domestic violence is that we men do this because we want power and control in our relationship, and we're willing to use violence or abusive behavior like control, manipulation, put downs in order to maintain that power and control. I can tell you as a former domestic violence offender, that wasn't my thinking, that thought wasn't in my head at all. And now being part of a domestic violence organization that helps domestic violence offenders, very rarely hear that story. Typically what we hear, and what was also my experience, is that, we're lashing out, acting out in ways that can be very harmful and abusive, but we're doing that in order to protect ourselves from some perceived threat. Maybe the best analogy I have is for soldiers who have suffered some trauma in combat. They have PTSD, they come back stateside, and they're reacting and overreacting to things that they don't need to react to. The trash can gets knocked over in the alleyway, and they overreact to it. The rest of us don't understand why are they reacting so in such a big way. But it's because of the very complex emotional and cognitive things going on in their mind based on their trauma, based on their past experiences, that is causing them to react and overreact and to overprotect themselves from things that they perceive to be threats. Criticism, a threat to this idea, am I a good person? Rejection or abandonment, it's a threat to, I'm a lovable, valuable, worthy person that's worthy of being in a relationship. Hurt people hurt people. And so to the extent that people are not hurting, i.e. they have good mental health, state of mind, domestic violence is going to go down markedly. There's a lot of issues, a lot of mental health issues. So I think for any individual to realize, hey, my behavior that's not serving me well, that's hurting somebody that I love, is related to hurts that I'm carrying around, and then to go, get help for that, especially if they can capture it early, if they recognize it early, and they realize there is a solution for this. It doesn't have to be this way. And that's really kind of what we try to do, is to help people realize that, their life, their relationships probably aren't going well for them. And there's a solution, and to give them some guidance. The number one reason why they're looking for help is loss of a relationship. Either their partner has left, or their partner is threatening to leave. They don't want to lose their relationship. They don't hate their partner. They don't want to hurt their partners. And they have finally realized, blindness, denial, whatever, didn't realize that what they were doing was that harmful. It seemed normal to them. Maybe they saw that behavior patterned in their families of origin. It just seemed like normal conflict. And somewhere along the line, they were presented with this idea that they're being abusive, or they saw a list of what constitutes abuse, or that proverbial brick wall that they ran into when their partner left. And then that becomes the motivation for them saying, oh, wow, I really do fit this definition, and I don't want to be that person. If you're worried about losing this relationship, there's no assurance that your partner is going to take you back. One of the pillars that we teach is that we can't control other people. They get to make decisions which we might not like, and we have to figure out, how can I live with that decision, because that's not my decision to make. Why is there such a big difference between men victimization rate and men reporting rate? And I think there's a number of reasons, probably varies for each man who's the victim. And I think these tend to stack up. For a lot of us men, we don't even realize we can be a victim. Just like even with women, maybe are not really thinking they're being victimized, that they are a victim of domestic violence. And you hear that story with women. I think that also happens with men. I think for men, it's even more prevalent because we just don't hear a lot of stories. If you read a book or watch a movie and domestic violence is featured in it, is it ever a man who is the victim? No, it's always a woman. So we men think, oh, that can't even actually happen to me. Then, the lack of services. Hey, I'm being victimized, but I don't know where to go because there are no services. Then there's the stigma of, well, I don't want to look like I'm, weak and getting beat up by a woman. And I think there's also a fear, look, if I go to the authorities, and this does happen, where they call a domestic violence hotline, and the man is somehow accused of being the perpetrator, acting like a victim instead of actually just being treated like a victim. Or they go to the authorities and they end up getting arrested for domestic violence. And so, or they fear that they're going to get arrested. So I think there's all those reasons that keep men from reporting. I think there's this perception by the lawmakers who are allocating the budget this is a female problem. I think domestic violence organizations are highly tied to that feminist issue, and they want to make sure that they are preserving the resources for women, women's shelters, and so forth. So they don't like to have that message out there. Quite honestly, it muddies the water for them. When they have a woman that comes to them who's a victim, they can say, look, men do this and so forth. If we allow that narrative of women are also abusive and 60% of relationships are mutually abusive, now all of a sudden it's a lot muddier story, and it doesn't work nearly as well for them for treating and helping victims. Men's patriarchy, their attitudes of superiority and entitlement, and since women don't have that and they are the oppressed class, they also can't be the perpetrators, and therefore men in heterosexual relationships can't be victims.
Adding to the controversy is the conflict tactics scale, a tool used to generate statistics on intimate partner violence, which remains a contentious point among scholars. This complex issue highlights the need for a balanced approach in addressing all forms of domestic violence. However, in fiscal year 2024, the U.S. government is set to allocate funding for the Office of Violence Against Women, with a budget of $1 billion, which is $300 million more than the previous year. Conversely, the U.S. government does not earmark specific funds for male victims of domestic violence.
Obviously, sometimes she beat me up. It really stays in your brain that you never, never, ever will be happy because you don't deserve that. And not deserve that. You are not born to that. We meet, we start talking. One night, finally, we start kissing. A month after that, we start a relationship. And at the beginning, I have to say that I don't see any warnings, nothing. All was good, and we love each other. We had classical relationship problems, no. But then we started living together. I was working all the day, paying the rent, paying bills, paying food. She don't do nothing. No job, no studies, nothing. She was not well. She have like depression, anxiety. I have depression and I don't see a problem there. There was a lot of people with depression who try to do things better. I assume my part of, well, I will help you. I will go to job. I will pay, no problem. She only have to try to stay better. Try to progress. Try to heal. I don't saw any kind of progression. She was not trying to go better. She only tried to go deeper in her problems, and then was when the things start going really bad. She starts yelling at me, saying horrible things to me one day, the next day, and every day. We decided to go to another place. We're living in Barcelona and we move out to Galicia. And then when we come here is when things go horrible. Really horrible. She always say to me, I'm not enough for her. I don't like you. I don't feel attracted for you. Basically, she says to me like I dress like a yonki. That's not something you want to hear from your partner. All my life I had problems with my physique, with my dressing, with all of that. I was trying to start looking at me with some kind of love, and that's impossible. And the only thing I needed in that time, it's someone who teach me how to do that. Teach me how to choose how to dress, how to look at yourself like you love yourself. And she never ever give that to me. Not only she doesn't give that to me, but she say that I never will reach that. One of the horrible things that she left to me is the feeling that my life will be always misery. And I remember clearly she saying that you and me was born to live in misery and not feel love and not feel happiness and not feel anything. I feel like it's the worst thing that she left to me, because that thing still gives me issues today with my friends, with my family, with my next girlfriend. I'm not with the next girl after her because of that. Because I don't know now. I don't know how to live. After her, I found the better person, and simply I don't know how to feel great. The next girl has given me the greatest gift, I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about something she did for me. She spent her time doing something for me, and I remember clearly the moment that she gave that to me. I froze. I look at her, and the first thing that I say to her is, "This is not for me." I don't know how to react to the love of others, because the only thing I can think is, this is not for me. I do not deserve this. I will deserve misery and hate and anger, and that lead me to places, and to horrible places, to seek for validation, to seek for the same. I'm on therapy, and my therapist say it's normal. It's normal that after that you still searching for that, and that's the horrible thing. And obviously sometimes she beat me up. It really stays in your brain that you never ever will be happy, because you don't deserve that, and not deserve that. You are not born to that. You are born to relationships with abuse, with toxicity. It's like every day it's a little bit, and the next day it's a little bit, and when you go out, it's like I don't recognize myself. I don't know who I am. I don't know where I am. By that time, I was not capable to trust in myself, to trust in what I'm thinking, what I'm doing, who are the people that deserve my love, my confidence. And that was horrible, because you feel lost and you feel scared. I have to talk with my friend of this or not? Will my friend understand this or not? Will my friends support me on this? Or maybe my friends say to me, you're acting like a drama queen. I will talk to her, and it's not that much. When all of this ended, I only feel anger. By that time, the only thing I needed is vengeance. Why, when this happened to me, there's no consequences for the other person? I don't know how this works, but there's always a part of me that always fight, that never ever feel weak. When all go bad, that part of me takes the lead and says, we will fight for this.
If you're having a bad day, talk to me. You're not lying. And
I will
okay.
not.
And I'm in another time zone and another country. So you got a close friend here, you got me over here rooting for, I'm your cheerleader.
Thanks. That really means a lot to me.
I mean that.
The only thing I need is someone to talk.
Research consistently shows that the actual rates of intimate partner violence are significantly higher than what standard crime surveys reveal. A 2010-2011 report highlighted that 27% of women who experienced intimate partner violence reported it to the police, compared to just 10% of men. Additionally, while 44% of women sought help from professional organizations, only 19% of men did the same. In Australia, the statistics are even more striking. The Australian Bureau of Statistics found that a staggering 97.2% of men do not report domestic violence to the police, compared to 82% of women. Similarly, a 2005 report by the National Crime Council in the Republic of Ireland estimated that only 5% of male victims reported violence to authorities, in contrast to 29% of female victims. These figures underscore the urgent need for greater awareness and support.
Been really important for me as part of my journey and my process to reframe my situation, to share my story, not as a victim, but as a someone who's grown from these experiences. But there's been plenty of times in the past where I've just thought of myself as a victim. You know, I've had a chance to have a lot of counseling on this and do a lot of healing on it, and I've learned that a lot of the roots of going through substantial emotional and mental abuse from women partners that I've had, that the root is in childhood bullying that for me that I experienced as a child from other boys, and was endured a lot of bullying from close family members, close friends. And my response that I developed at such a young age, as early as 4, I just kept on trying to be better friends with them and trying to win their approval and love. And so that's kind of a primary trauma for me. When I started developing long-term partnerships with women, that pattern kept reemerging. And looking back, I had a pattern of falling in love with women who had a lot of trauma themselves. You know, me being a healer myself, there was something in them looking for the healer in me, and there's something in me wanting to be that caregiver, kind of a hopeless codependent. My healing really came full circle when I realized that this was a pattern, that there was something in me that was attracted to women like that. And there was a lot of choice I had, and that gave me a lot of power back to be able to relearn my story that way and re-understand it, and to pay close attention to the small ways I step back into that type of pattern. My filters are pretty tight, really being careful when I meet somebody that has been through a lot of trauma, just because I'm very vulnerable in those moments. And so a lot of this is deep psychological stuff that has taken a lot of healing, and everybody has their own journey, and it's left me with an incredible amount of compassion for other men. I had, before I went through my most recent divorce and custody battle of my child, I was not aware of any of this. And so, but since then, the journey in going through this process over the past several years has really led me more empowered. When am I going to put a stop to being the victim and continually sharing this story and perpetuating this narrative? And that comes through my own work, and every man is at a different place. And I don't want to downplay the challenges any man or any woman faces. I'm a part of a project called Mankind Project, which I think was really helpful in that. That's when I started to hear other men talk about being in emotionally abusive relationships with women, and how that being a pattern that they continued over and over. That hearing that from other men was so important for me. Yeah. Feeling a compassion, just trusting, right? And never hearing that from a man ever before. Wow, it was so helpful. Without that, how would I be able to share this and have a perspective on how to share this in the best way? And those are the men that taught me playing the victim was actually part of the problem. And that they'll be there to hold me and hear me cry over and over and over. And they want me to transcend this. And it's possible to transcend this. Women that I was attracted to and that ended up falling into these long-term partnerships, they have this history of trauma. That's one thing. But the other thing is that they had never been with a guy that asked them how they felt, curious about how they felt. that was part of their discourse. So that was part of their attraction to me. They'd never been in that relationship. And when it came down to actually sitting down and talking about feelings before screaming at somebody, that vulnerability was too much for them to handle. Can I share something that at this point, I'd like to be off record. I'd be happy to share a little bit more. I think, find somebody in their life that they can trust to really be honest and vulnerable about what's going on. A therapist, or maybe that's a friend. A confidential space where you can talk about it. I think peer support groups, stuff like Mankind Project, even a lot of 12-step groups, I feel like are really great places to do your work, to get support. It's really important to look at trauma from how it affects our whole body, not just talking about the problems. Talking about the problems is one thing. Getting social support is another thing. Learning how to express your emotions, work through emotional stuff is one thing, but there's a whole nother level. Trauma, we know healing from trauma is most deeply impacts our body. Our body is like our muscles and our tissues in our body and nervous system is like a sponge. And if we don't heal that, then our bodies maybe have stuff figured out up here, but our bodies are continue to store and can even reenact that trauma and cause harm to other people or go through that same pattern. And I think that's a misunderstood thing about trauma, is that it's just something to talk about or something to medicate, right? Or even just to share emotionally. Even that sharing what's going on emotionally can have its limits. And it's a lifelong work to keep on healing our bodies. I think the most important healing we all have to do is the most important is in the privacy of our own hearts. That's the most important. It's my job to create safety in myself. It's not another woman. It's not another man. It's maybe I need help, right? But that's the important work, and it can be really scary if it's a dangerous place inside. In my opinion, there is not ever going to be this space where we're exonerated from doing that work and keeping on healing ourselves.
Societal stereotypes paint men as proactive, powerful, controlling, while decades of feminist tradition have often portrayed women as the sole victims of intimate partner violence. This cultural backdrop makes it difficult for male victims to be believed and even to recognize their own victimization. Women who assault their male partners are more likely to avoid arrest compared to men who assault their female partners. This is largely because female perpetrators of intimate partner violence are often viewed by law enforcement agencies and, in fact, the courts themselves as victims. This gender bias impacts how justice is administered and highlights the need for a more balanced approach to handling domestic violence cases.
They're afraid to say anything or do anything because of how their mother is. I had to set up my friends with who was my wife if I wanted to see my kids every day. So I had met my wife and when I was in college, and we dated for a few months and broke off, and then we reconnected 3 years later, and she had a 2-year-old daughter, and we decided to get married, and we got married in. Right after we got married, I started seeing the signs of manipulation and jealousy. Like, I was publicly humiliated. We'd be out in the store going grocery shopping, and didn't matter where I was looking, she would yell out in the store, "Oh my God, you're looking at her ass," and did it in front of family and friends. And that went on for a while until she wanted to have another kid, and we ended up getting pregnant. And I came home from work one day after we found out that she was pregnant, and I had this glass bottle thrown at my head, and it shattered all over the wall. And then she was threatening to leave to go back to her home state and take the kid, obviously, with her. She didn't give birth to him yet. And I had to follow her down there. And she brought our kids around her father, who was also a known child molester. Our oldest ended up getting molested by him because she put him in his care. I was threatened by her family a lot, her dad especially. She was pregnant with our third child, And she was, literally, I came home and she had cuts all over her stomach from a razor blade, kicking me out of her parents' house. I was forced to live with a friend of their families, and I didn't have any support or anyone down there. Around 2016, she started getting physically abusive toward me, punching, kicking, yelling at me, threatening to take the kids. If I didn't let her flirt and cheat on me with other men, I couldn't do anything about it because she would just start flipping out, threatening me to take my kids, and the parents never helped. They always took her side. My parents were also trying to take my kids from me, like the whole time. I had a battle just to be a dad. I was forced to quit jobs and move whenever she wanted. She wouldn't let me have any control of the money. So around 2016, it got fairly bad. She would start fights with me too, and then record me getting upset about it, and then just playing it back randomly in front of me and in my face. She wanted to hook up with one of my friends, and I was like, are you kidding me? And she threatened to take my kids away, and both her parents and my parents would have been on her side. So it was like me against the world, it felt like. So there was not much I could do besides like kind of give in. So from 2016 to about 22, she was cheating on me and just beating me. She would use threaten suicide as a threat toward me. She would call the cops and say that I was being like violent and I couldn't be around the kids. Her and my parents were both telling my kids that I was schizophrenic, that I was diagnosed schizophrenic and violent and a danger to be around. So they were actively trying to keep my kids from me. I walked around my house with 2 black eyes and no one did anything about it. My parents acted like I deserved it. We were driving around with our kids one time, and she started punching me in the face while she was driving. She hit me about 8 times and spit on me twice in front of the kids. And I ended up calling the cops, and she didn't even get arrested. They did nothing.
What did the police say when you spoke to them?
They pulled her aside, and I know, like, usually in situations like that, if someone's hitting or even in front of the kids, it's an automatic someone's getting arrested, and they didn't do that. Like, I didn't want to press charges in front of my kids and cause that kind of devastation to them. She got represented for free by the law firm she works at, and they slapped me with domestic violence, stalking. I had a whole year of no contact with my kids, and that's supposed to be ended now, but now she's telling me to get on medicine or I'm not going to see my kids. I have to give her money when she wants it, right when she wants it. Otherwise, I get threatened with her free lawyers again. It's a shitty mess. I was even working 3rd shift at a company back when everything went remote for like kids in school.
Yeah.
And I had to put my 4 kids through remote schooling while maintaining a 3rd shift job, so I wasn't able to sleep at all. I was the only one with a license. I was the only one with a car. I was the only one with a job. I bought all our apartments, all our furnishings, everything when she wanted it, like when we needed it. I was the sole provider for 10, 12 years before she even got a job, and then none of her money went to any of the bills. Like, she was just spending it on whatever the heck she wanted.
Why didn't you just leave?
I didn't feel safe leaving my kids there. I wanted to do whatever I could to be around my kids every day. I never wanted to be a part-time dad. And my kids knew that I would give up anything and drop anything to be there for them when they needed me, if they needed me. I told them I didn't care if I was in the middle of work. I said, you kids need me, you call me when I'm there. You know, and I didn't trust my parents and their side of the family because, I mean, they're all alcoholics. And for the most part, I was the only one around my kids. My parents were never there. She was never there. I was always making sure that they got up and to school, and I was always there when they got home from school. I always made sure that they were fed. I always got them food, anything that they needed for school. I was the sole provider while working 3rd shift. I got used to going 3 days no sleep just to maintain the schedules with my children. I sacrificed a lot for these kids, and now they're not in my life, and it's really hard and shitty for me to feel happy because I don't have my children. They're afraid to say anything or do anything because of how their mother is. I had to set up my friends with who was my wife if I wanted to see my kids every day and not be beaten Before the divorce was finalized by her and I got thrown out of my parents' house for good, I did 2.5 years of therapy. I was seeing my therapist once a week for the first year and a few months, and then I went to every other week. I was like, I really don't think I need medication. I need myself out of the situation. And he fully agreed. He's like, yeah. He's like, no, I don't think you do. Because he's like, you seem to be functioning. He's like, you're pretty smart. You got a good head on your shoulders. I mean, he thought I read a book on complex PTSD because of all the abuse that my wife had went through with her family. I kind of figured, like, she's definitely got some PTSD and complex PTSD from how her parents and how her father molested and raped her for years. He was talking about how they had, like, a free national mental health care day for, like, men. Yeah. And he said that he was absolutely, like, mortified on how many people were standing outside harassing the men that showed up for that day. I'm working in a self-compassion workbook that most therapists recommend. So I do that on a daily basis. I have a girlfriend now who's really good support. Good. We got our own apartment. We got plenty of room. Like, I could give the kids such a much better life, but she's just using them as a weapon over my head.
Many men refrain from reporting or admitting to domestic violence due to fears of ridicule, embarrassment, and a lack of support. This taboo subject is frequently trivialized and ignored by society, complicating efforts to gauge its true prevalence. The shortage of support services and healthcare professionals for male victims further exacerbates the problem, leaving many without the necessary assistance. As we continue to shed light on this issue, it's clear that addressing the needs of all domestic violence victims, regardless of gender, is crucial for a more supportive and inclusive society.
Men ain't got shit. And when you look at this, men aren't fighting because they're scared to death. It's based on emotional fear. I had an amazing childhood, man. I mean, it was really, really a great childhood. Very father and mother, probably closer to my father. I just utterly admired the man. And from that, I grew up a military brat, went back into the military as an officer, and then later became an OSI agent, got out. My last marriage was an issue of I didn't understand or comprehend that I was in an abusive relationship. But then after our child was born, it got violent, physically, emotionally, mentally, financially. Every man has boundaries, and it's any man. You cross that hard boundary, and it's a point of no return. You don't go back. And mine was emasculating, humiliating me, and assaulting me in front of my child. I left. She even said in front of my child, "I can't wait for you to get the fuck out." To this day, when I replay that in my memory, I can't. Somebody would say that. No, let's say that in front of a child. That was hard. I knew enough about abusive relationships and narcissistic personality disorders. My child was going to be subjected to the abuse because she had lost her feed mechanism. And the divorce process was horrid. I couldn't believe what I was walking into. And my divorce attorney said, "Bill, you used to be a federal agent, but this isn't criminal law. This isn't civil law." Because I would list to her proper administration of law. I'm like, the judge should be doing this. This should be happening. That shouldn't happen there. This is family court. None of that applies. And I was blown away. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And I was a former federal agent, and so I'd like to think I've been an expert witness on, deposed and stuff, and professionally in other matters. I just couldn't believe what I was running into. I started to get on what I call my warrior mindset. I started to get on my analytical brain, counterintelligence, counterespionage agent that I was trained to be. That if I walked into an ambush, how do you get rid of the ambush? One is you have to figure out the weakness of the ambush. But I started information gathering, and I started going to public events, veterans meetings, Kiwanis Club meetings, and just asking questions. Have you been divorced? Yeah. How was your divorce? Horrible. 14 family law firms. First question they asked, "What county did you get your divorce?" And I told them. And they said, "That's the worst county in Georgia." those judges that are hell-bent on destroying fathers. And it blew my mind. Saying to me, that's the worst county in the state, that's quotes from them. And I that's when I started digging. How bad is this? How long has this been going on? Why there's so many intentional violations of law? Why is there? And I just didn't get answers. So being in the IT field, I pulled together some volunteers, IT consultants, big data guys. And so we just started bringing in data and analyzing the data, professional documents, peer review, psychological analysis, the whole gamut, just filling up the database. We had close to 20 terabytes of data at one time, and finally I just said, stop, let's analyze what we got. And they showed me the data of women's organizations, specifically National Organization of Women, have been successfully litigating changes in law, substantive changes in sentiment. Men have zero to 500. And so I said, that's the answer. You have to build a nonprofit. It's for fathers and children. And when I had my little 14-month-old girl in my arm, and I called up, I was told there is no DV shelter for men. Here's a DV shelter you can call them. It's some flea bag rundown hotel. I'm like, I'm not taking a 14-month-old in a rundown flea bag hotel. Well, you're going to have to go get a hotel on your own. I'm a victim of domestic violence. I see you got domestic violence counseling that's offered by the state for free. I need help. Well, Mr. Corbett, you can go, but I wouldn't recommend it because mostly women are there. Men ain't got shit. And when you look at this, men aren't fighting because they're scared to death. It's based on emotional fear of what men have gone through for so long. Men have been beat up so bad for so long, we actually can't fight and nothing will happen to us, isn't part of the conversation. Fight, flight, and freeze are your 3 key fear responses. Didn't know who to go to, no one to call and talk to. Family damn well ain't gonna help you. You think friends are gonna help you if you're a man? Nope. So where does a man reach for help? We got nowhere. We fend for ourselves. That dad's been so beat up for it, so beat up legally, he ain't got the mental, he ain't got the emotional fight in him. He has zero fight in him. They stripped my dignity, they stripped my professionalism, they stripped my income, they've stripped me down to where I live, paycheck, and I make 6 figures a year. There's no sense in fighting this. Bill, you got waging a good war. Noble effort, Bill, good luck. Because they don't want to fight. They have such a defeatist mentality, lost that hunger for winning, rooting for the underdog. They don't want to do that because it's too much work and they don't see the win in it. It's easy to do nothing. Because if you think about it, I'm even fighting for the men that hate me. I mean, think about it logically. I'm fighting so men have enforced rights. All men, they hate my guts because I'm not a feminist. If you're a man and you're listening to this, if you hate my guts, here's a real quick piece of wise advice. Just be quiet. Let me do my work and I'll save your kids' lives. I'll protect you even though you hate my guts. I'm fighting for all men and boys, children, because this should not continue generationally. Weaker men before us, my father's generation, my grandfather's generation, they didn't stop it. I've had it. I tell them, just calm down, be quiet, sit in the bleachers and watch your warriors on the field. And then when it's over, you can rush the field and tear down the goalpost. It requires strong men to step up and stop it.
You remember how you told me you won't make love to me, and it's my fault.
I didn't.
You remember that?
What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing?
Call the police and etc. or whatever.
Don't hurt yourself.
Don't threaten me with making love! Well, I didn't fucking throw your arm and leg in there, but hey, now you have a reason not to make love to me.
It's really fucking tough for me, man. This is really fucking hard. Fuck. My name is Kurtz, and I'm the director of this film. After listening to these men share their stories and revealing their vulnerabilities, I realized I couldn't do the right thing unless I shared my story. A few years ago, I was in a relationship that ended very abruptly. Came as a complete shock. Just devastating to me. I was in the process of healing, getting better, working on things, going to therapy, and really I was in a much better place, you know? I was feeling really good about myself. And through a mutual friend, I happened to meet someone, and I was really, really drawn to her. Not just because she was beautiful, but because of her intelligence. She's pitch black hair, just naturally pitch black hair, these bright, blue, radiant eyes. And she was fluent in French and studying international business law. I mean, she was the head server at a high-end sushi joint in Dallas. She had it all together. I was really feeling good about myself and good about this situation. Wasn't 100% over things, made that very clear, but I felt that I was really someone that when I was ready for a relationship, to move forward and to go into a better place. So as relationships progress, usual course of action. So she was in between places. One apartment lease was up and gonna end soon. New place wouldn't be ready for 2 weeks. And I told her, I'm like, look, I really need my alone time still. Previous relationship ended abruptly, but it started abruptly. And I'm not ready to get into anything and move forward with stuff until I'm really 100% sure. She assured me, absolutely, understand, I want the same thing. I'm not ready to be tied down, too busy, got too much going on. Let's just keep things they are, but I just need a couch to crash on. Fair enough. And just like some of the other men in this video, the same thing happened. It seemed like overnight. The minute she moved in, everything started to go strange.
Why don't you go
Who
take
are you
pictures
talking
of that bitch?
And she suddenly dropped out of school. Out of the blue. She was out. I'm done with that. Okay. She got fired from her job. I was like, oh, and I knew at that moment, I was like, I'm fucked. Fucked. I don't know what I'm gonna do. This is not a situation I want to be in. This is not a situation that makes me happy. But I was accepting, and I tried to be patient and calm and cool and collect about everything. I wasn't about to throw her on the street. Then she changed.
And if I don't hurt myself,
Okay,
I will fucking kill someone. Did you not hear me?
Okay, you really?
Don't lecture me on this.
You really? I'm
Seriously.
worried. I just saw that.
I'd wake up randomly in the middle of the night. She'd be pacing the apartment, listening to the walls with a knife, thinking she hears rats, peering out the window, thinking the neighbors are trying to kill us. It was absolute hell, and I had nobody to turn to, just like these men.
No, put that down.
And I'm doing nothing like what you're doing.
No.
Because, you know, you were gonna make love to me until I fucked it up.
I didn't say that.
You know what? I was gonna cut myself until I fucked that up too.
It was so insane. It was so maddening that I was in this situation, which was so horrible. Every minute I had no clue what was going to happen the next minute. I'm sleeping hidden away upstairs with a 9mm under my pillow. I'm writing friends saying, if I die, it's not suicide. A gun wasn't under my pillow because I was going to end it. It was for my protection. And when you're contacting people and you're letting them know, whatever happens, don't stop the investigation until they find the person who did it. That's a bad place. Didn't have the money to disappear. Can't try to evict her because she'd been there long enough. This is going on like 3 months. I can't evict her because then I'm evicted. So what do? I'm trying to build my life. I'm trying to do the right thing, and I'm stuck in the middle of this. And it just became a awful place. And you know, when somebody cuts themselves, when they punch themselves, and you sit there and they demand sex from you, and all you want is peace and quiet. You dream of a monastery somewhere just to disappear to. and they manipulate you, and they tell you they'll call the cops. And as she once said to me, that I'll never forget, who do you think they're going to believe? For years I had the man up who lets a woman do something like that to them. And now I've learned. And that's why I started this documentary. I wanted to have these guys, give these guys a platform, talk, share their story. And I hope you take from that too. And if you're a guy watching this and you've got that cavalier, badass attitude, like, I'm not gonna let some chick do that, then you haven't gone through it. It's not as easy as just walking away. There's money, there's jobs, there's transportation, there's kids, everything. Hell, you could be on parole and you are at the whim of a lunatic. And it's a terrifying, terrifying place to be. And unless you've been there, you don't get it. It's not as easy as point A to point B. It's a very, very fucking complex situation. And every one of them is unique. But they all have one thing in common. You feel like you're drowning. And you're in a living nightmare. But you're not alone. You're not alone. So I want to say this to the men who are part of this project, and to those I spoke with that weren't in the project. It's nothing against their stories. It's just there's a limited amount of time, and there's only so many you can do for so long. I want you to know something. We're the Brotherhood of the Walking Wounded. People see us every day and they have no idea. They have no clue. But just remember, you're a brother to me. And I love you. And if you need anything, anyone at all, not just the guys in this film, anyone who sees this, maybe you've been in a horrible situation like mine. Maybe it was worse. Maybe it wasn't as bad. There's a strong man inside of you. He might be beaten down. He may have taken some hits. But that strong man is there. And you may not hear him, but he's there. And I assure you, once you find a way to safety and you start your process of healing, that man's going to tap you on the shoulder and say, "Hi there, old friend." But he's not gone. You're not less of a man. You're not weak. And don't listen to these motherfuckers out there who's sitting there laughing, chuckling at this whole thing for what you went through. Fuck them. Stay strong. Kick ass. Move. Either go over the mountain, around the mountain, or through the mountain. But you're going to find a way. It's going to happen. Other men have been in this situation, and other men have been out of the situation. And some of them are in it right now while I record this. But stay strong. And fuck the haters.